Today it's my privilege to talk with Hannah Mailer. Life doesn't always go in the sort of the paths that we expect along everybody's life. Bumps come in the road, things that we couldn't have imagined. And it's easy to imagine when you sort of seeing people in church that everybody's kind of like they've got it all together. But the truth is, and I think one of the best things about doing these interviews is has been just the willingness of people that said, you know what, if you only knew. And it's brilliant to be able to let Hannah tell her story about some things that have been going on for her and where she sees God involved in that and how she's making sense of that. Before we get to that, Hannah, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you are, etc., etc.
Okay, so I'm a mum of one little boy called Reuben, who, if you've ever met, you'll know you've met. Um, he's a very special character, one on his own. Married to Phil, who is generally a behind the scenes man. And if you've ever had an email from church, it's come from him. I work 3 days a week for the police in the back offices. So I pay lots of people lots of money to do with buildings and vehicles and book travel and very boring things, but it's a job. Yeah, that's me.
You've been
Really.
in Salford since you were a student.
Yes. So I came to Salford 19 years ago now to do my degree and met Phil at Christian Union and got married and stayed here.
Fantastic. Last year, things weren't always that great health-wise, were they? Tell us about what was going on last year for you.
So it was actually the end of the year before, so just about 2 years ago now. I had a problem with my vision in my right eye. My eye itself became very sore, and then I couldn't see properly out of my right eye. It was like almost like you're about to pass out sort of vision where you recede down a tunnel, and bright light was artificial light was a bit tricky. And was quite scary, to be honest. It started to get better after about a couple of weeks and continued to get better, but was diagnosed with what they term optic neuritis. So that's where the optic nerve sheath has been attacked, which causes problems with the signal coming from the eye into the brain. And wasn't really told exactly what that would mean, but having Dr. Google, you can work it out. So that was a possibility and can be a sign of multiple sclerosis. But I was believing that that was not the case, that because it can happen, you just have that and that's it, and nothing ever happens again. So that was what I was believing for. But I did end up with quite a lot of neck pain, but I don't know if that's related at all, but could be. And had a lot of headaches, but just kind of put it down to just life.
Yeah. But at the beginning of the year, you were diagnosed, weren't you?
Well, I wasn't fully diagnosed till the end of, well, I wasn't told until the end of June this year. But end of February, I had what I now know to be a multiple sclerosis relapse. So my right leg started feeling odd one night. Got up off the sofa to go to bed and was like, that does not feel normal. It felt hot, but if you touched my leg, it did not feel any different temperature to the other leg. And I just went, oh, I've just trapped a nerve. It'll be fine. I'll get up in the morning. It'll be back to normal. It'll be fine. I try not to over dramatize anything. Got up in the morning and it wasn't any better. And 3 days later, it still wasn't any better. And then other feelings started to creep in. My left leg decided it wasn't going to move quite as much as I wanted it to. I had sensitivity issues in my hands and arm. And then I just got really, really, really tired. Like, it was all I could do to get up, get dressed, get moving to school, and get home again. And then I had to sit down. It's like, this is not right. So I had Googled these symptoms, as you do, and went to the GP, and he was like, yeah, no, you're not talking rubbish, you're not dramatizing anything, this is not good. Basically did some preliminary, like, I'll scratch you with the end of this tool and do your reflexes and whatever, and put an urgent referral letter into neurology. So through lockdown, I've had an MRI and several blood tests and all sorts of things, and was eventually told at the end of June that it is indeed relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis.
Okay. Now, for those of us who've not had to sort of deal with this, am I right in thinking there's a couple of different sorts of conditions, and one is a very quickly progressive MS, but yours is the other one, isn't it? It's the one that doesn't progress as quickly, but I suppose, as you say, it's like this idea that you'll have relapses from time to time. Is that right? Is that how?
Yes. So, it is a condition where, an autoimmune condition where your own immune system is attacking the myelin nerve sheath around your nerves. So, it then disrupts the signals going through those nerves, which would cause maybe a weakness in that particular area, or a loss of sensation, or a change in sensation, or an itching, or lots of different things. Basically, your nerves have just gone a bit haywire.
Right. To be told this is like, I mean, it's scary stuff, isn't it? I mean, it's, to experience it and then to be told it is kind of like, this is a big deal. How did you respond when you knew that actually all the things you'd been googling beforehand, it was true? How did you respond to
that? Initially, it was. I was quite up and down. So at the very beginning of it being my fear that it was going to be diagnosed as multiple sclerosis, I was like, well, okay, that's not fun, but we have a big God, so okay, fair enough. And I sort of knew that that's what it was going to be diagnosed as, and I knew that if God was going to heal me, then I still had to have a diagnosis to be healed from. So I knew that if it is God's will that I be healed, it wasn't going to be at that point.
Mm.
I suppose it almost felt like, though, at points, like your future is almost taken away from you and has been, it's not your future, it's what someone else has told you it's going to be.
Mm.
Which, when you're not even 40, that's quite scary, because you're thinking, I haven't done what I want to do with my life. I haven't done what I was here to do yet.
Mm. So that's a really interesting way of expressing it. So, how have you made sense of it thus far with faith, with God, in the light of what you know about Jesus? How have you made sense of it all, or how are you making sense? Is probably a better question.
Yeah, this is very definitely a journey. This is not okay, flick a switch and
Yeah.
that's how it is. And some parts of the journey are smoother than others. Now, I believe in a big, big God, bigger than we can fathom as a human being. And that faith has been tested, but especially through this, but I came to the conclusion very quickly that it's better to do this with God than without God. And if life was always easy, why would we need faith?
Mm.
It wouldn't be faith if life was always just handed to you
Mm.
on a platter the way you wanted it.
Mm.
It would be very easy to dismiss God at that point. And I've seen people with lifelong conditions do life without God, and I know that that's not where I want to be.
Mm.
And just because you could say that God has allowed this to happen, you could then blame God for it happening. But what would be the point in that?
Mm.
Because that then upsets your relationship with God, not because he's upset with you, but with how you then respond to him.
Mm.
And what am I saying? Yeah, basically, it's better to do this with God. If we don't have unwavering hope or faith, what have we got left humanly? This is not a positive diagnosis. But if I believe in such a big God, why can I not believe that he can use this as a means to an end? Why can I not believe that he can use this as a catalyst for growth and change in me?
Mm.
It has forced me to really assess everything that's in my life, from what I do with my body, what I put in my body, be that emotionally, spiritually, physically, it has really made me just go, is that really what I should be doing? Is that really what I should be thinking? Is that really what is best for me right now? And so I suppose it's not been an easy experience at all. And yet God is still there.
Mm.
And it's very helpful to write things down. So I knew from the very beginning of the year that this was not going to be a particularly easy year, because every January I ask God for a word for the year. And the word he gave me was rebuild. But never did I think that I would be taken further down and rebuilding foundations, let alone anything else above.
Mm. Mm.
But I'd rather do it with God and be built into the shape that God wants than on my own.
It's a great way of thinking about it, because in a sense, if you do it with God, then you leave yourself open to the possibilities of healing. You leave yourself to the possibility of transformation. You leave yourself open to the possibility of my life will glorify God, whatever, whatever happens. Final question, really, Hannah. So how how can we in the wider church community, how can we best support, help, engage with you? Because yeah, what do you want to what do you want us to do? What do you want us not to do?
I really don't want everybody to think I'm a poor old soul and fawn over me and be over the top. That's not me. That's not where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would be really helpful for people to pray for me. In terms of, so physically, I'm still able to do pretty much anything
Mm-hmm.
I could have done before. It might take me a bit longer. I might be in a bit more pain, but I can still do it. I am not disabled. So for day to day, probably just strength and energy to do what I need to do. Prayer for that would be really helpful. Prayer for the strength to change my life the way God wants me to know what the next right thing to do is, to quote Frozen 2.
That well-known theological book.
Oh yeah. God talks through films, definitely.
Essentially, that's the thing that we would all want to prepare for, isn't it? That we would be open to God, that we'd be aware of what He's wanting us to do, that we would live well for Him. And I suppose it's the reason it's helpful for us to hear you say it is because you're in a particular context right now. But actually, the challenge is the same challenge we've all got. It's just your context has changed a little. And as you're seeking to serve God and to follow Jesus and learn the way of Jesus in this context, it's kind of like, well, we can pray that for you, that in this context you might know what God would want for you. Hannah, it's been great to listen to you talk about this. I mean, these are early days, and as you said, this is a journey, and this is a journey you go on, but it's a journey you go on that we would want you not to go on alone. that I think in two ways. Firstly, that you be supportive with folks around you, but secondly, I think that you're a gift of God with the church. So the invitation to us in watching what God does with you is that we might also grow. So you're not sort of like the case that needs sorting, but as always, you're part of the body with the gifts that God gives you in the midst of the situation you find yourself in. We will pray for you and for Phil and for Ruben, that together as a family you be blessed, and that you as an individual will discover all that's ahead. Not yet 40, not yet
Not quite.
middle-aged, not quite middle-aged, but that you will discover what God has for you in these days and serve him well. It's been great talking to you. Thank you ever so much.